Hi everyone, Anthony Gordon. I am a lawyer and financial planner. Today I'm going to talk about financial planning challenges for Canadian business owners, and it's part of the reason why I created this channel. I work with a lot of business owners in different capacities, whether it be financial planning or whether it be exit planning or whether it just be straight up business coaching. And what I've seen is, a bunch of different challenges. Today I'm going to focus on the financial planning challenges that business owners go through. I'm going to talk a bit about that, and quite frankly, it's the reason for the channel. It's the reason for the channel because what I've seen is it's such a dynamic environment being a business owner and dealing with finances both at a corporate level, at a business level, and also as an individual. And so what I'm going to do here is share what are the typical challenges that I have seen. Okay, let's start off with the first one. The biggest one is the blurred lines. I call it the blurred lines because what you have is personal and business income, and sometimes it gets blurred, as I've said before. And what typically happens is because a lot of your income is being generated in a business, and sometimes expenses overlap. We have these common pitfalls where we may be thinking about paying ourselves a bit from the business, having some of the expenses through the business, and sometimes there's this, back and forth between what is personal and what's business. And I would strongly advise you to, have a conversation with your accountant to make sure that you're doing the right things. Another thing is sometimes you want to just take money out of the corporation. Potentially these are, shareholder loans, and they have ramifications for that. And sometimes, like I said, using corporate accounts for personal expenses, and those are things that in the long run could come back and have significant potential pitfalls, right? And so, what this also leads to in many instances are poor cash flow management and, quite frankly, unintended tax consequences. So, this is one of the biggest challenges I see. Here's the next one: complex tax rules. If we're talking about pulling money from the corporation, you're either going to pull it as a dividend, we're going to pull it as salary or loans or whatever way, you decide to structure it. But there are tax ramifications for all of this. And the system that we have, it frequently changes. And if you do the wrong thing, it comes with penalties. And oftentimes it's misunderstood or quite frankly just straight up ignored. And there are potential things you need to consider. What is the passive income rule and how does that work? When is it considered a shareholder loan? When does it have to be paid back? What's the interest rate that should be charged? All these different things. And if you don't have the right guidance and you make these mistakes or you take these actions without the proper guidance, there are significant tax ramifications for that. Another big challenge I see is irregular income. And like all business, there's fluctuations. I call it the piston theory sometimes, where you have certain months you're up, certain months you may be down. And overall, you kind of have this consistency, in terms of how much you make annually, with the goal for that amount to increase. But what we also have is, depending on the season, for a lot of businesses, you have inconsistent cash flow. And if you have inconsistent cash flow, then sometimes you may, have different revenue streams, which affects how you could take money out and what you could spend on, what you not spend on. And if you're in the certain businesses, what you also have is seasonal revenue. So income might come in, in December, but slows down quite a bit in January, February, and March. And it may take a little while to start coming back. April might come back, and then Mother's Day, you're back in the swing of things, right? Another thing that you may want to consider is, depending on your business, you may have delayed payments, right? And that creates these cash flow gaps that sometimes you have to rely on line of credits or, just kind of structure your business. Sometimes delay paying yourself, heaven forbid, even delay paying your employees at certain instances. But listen, unlike salaried employees, business owners face unpredictability, and this complicates budgeting, saving, and quite frankly, retirement planning. So these are other challenges that I see. Another one is not having employer benefits, right? And so what you're looking at here is you could have an injury, have some type of illness, and not have the proper coverage, right? Or if you do, you may have be underinsured. So I've seen that. Another thing is you rely on income because you don't, want to go get the health or the dental insurance policies. And so what happens there is you might have certain instances where you spend quite a bit out of pocket, And from a retirement planning standpoint, what we also have is retirement savings, RSPs, TFSAs, IPPs. When do you take that? How do you structure it? And without the proper guidances, business owners may underinsure or neglect retirement planning altogether. So these are some challenges I see. Then we also have succession and exit planning. You know, unlike a cookie cutter pension plan that you know exactly how much you have earned after a certain amount of years, you may not have that with your business. And so you may want to say, okay, how do I sell? How do I transfer my business? Quite frankly, what is my business even worth? You know, how do I qualify for the lifetime capital gains exemption? You know, what's the best way to pass this on to my kids? Or if I do decide to sell it, what's the best way to structure from a tax planning standpoint? And quite frankly, what happens is most business owners don't really think about this until the very end, or heaven forbid an illness happens or death, or quite frankly they go, let me just get to the mountaintop and then I'll plan. But in many instances, what you'll find is that that's a little bit too late. Now you could do what you can at that particular stage, but quite frankly, it would have been better in most instances if you start to think about that much earlier. And quite frankly, let's think about retirement. I know business owners don't like to hear that word retirement. They think of it, freedom, or I want to continue working in my business until I choose to. So whatever way you want to look at it, let's consider financial independence, if you will. Planning for retirement also means exiting the business, right? Which requires careful consideration of multiple factors. And when I say exit the business, sometimes I look at it as move from different stages, from being a person doing everything, to going to management, and then from management becoming the CEO, from being CEO to the investor, and then from the investor maybe you move to the board, and then even from the board, at that point you have a share, then sometimes you just sell off. But regardless of every one of those stages, you have to be cognizant of how it's going to be done from a practical standpoint, internally in the business, and also from a financial standpoint. And these I see are additional challenges. Time. If you're a business owner, you do know that one of the biggest challenges is time. A lot of time, you don't have time. And quite frankly, running a business sometimes is more than a full-time job, because you're doing it on the weekends and you're doing it on the nights. And what happens is finances and financial planning is something that goes on the back burner. And even though it would be helpful to proactively put things in place to save thousands of dollars and build your wealth and protect against risk, in many instances, what we have are individuals who, quite frankly, just don't have the time for that and don't actually take the steps to do it. So time is also another big factor. Another factor is a lot of business owners started a business themselves. They did this own, they kind of fight the good fight. They pushed at things, they wrestled with things, and they got it done. And that self-reliant mentality, often leads to them not hiring a professional advisor. And so sometimes they look to forums or they look to friends and see what they have done. And quite frankly, sometimes these forums and friends may not have the tailored expert strategies. And so what you have is missed opportunities and, quite frankly, costly mistakes. And even if you get some of that right, what you often miss is that this is a comprehensive thing. There are many moving parts with looking at finances from a business stuff when you're a business owner. There's a comprehensive challenge. You have the tax challenge, you have the risk management challenge, you have the corporate structure and legacy planning, cash flow management, exit planning, estate planning, budgeting, both at the corporate level and at the individual level, right? So what we have is that it's a complex integration of multiple disciplines. And if you are not aware of all these things, you could have potential gaps. Now, here's the thing. In many instances, you have somebody who is often motivated. And again, it kind of boils down to, I'm going to do it this way versus, this way meaning my way. With the little that I've known or what I could pull from YouTube, maybe learn stuff from here, or you could get guidance. And quite frankly, I'm not going to say one approach is right and one approach is better than the other, but ultimately, because it's all knowledge that you could probably gain, but ultimately, what I always recommend is at least have a conversation with an expert. Have a conversation with an expert to see if there are gaps, and if there is a gap, then maybe that expert could help, because maybe you are great at certain aspects of financial planning as an individual, as a business owner, as somebody who knows your finances quite well. And but maybe there's a gap there. Now, why do I highlight all these? I highlight all these because these are some of the things that I've seen with business owners and the challenges they have. And quite frankly, this is why I have this channel. And so what I'm going to do is highlight and tackle all these challenges that I've brought about, I talked about in the last 10 minutes or so. And over the next bit of time, I'm going to be posting consistently about these challenges and how to deal with them, right? Some of them will strictly be financial planning, some of it will be exit planning, some of it will be psychology and mindset. And what I'll be doing is taking my experience as a business owner, taking my experiences working with many business owners, take my experience of, currently coaching business owners, take my experience of helping over the time and even teaching and workshops and talks and all these things, and pour it into this channel such that hopefully you could benefit from this. So if you think these are some of the challenges that you're facing as a business owner and you're curious about how to solve them, subscribe to this channel, because over the next little bit I'll be addressing a lot of these problems and I will be providing solutions as best as I can. Hopefully this was helpful. Thank you all for checking in. Catch you on the next video.